right, guys. Good evening. Where two or more are gathered, the Lord is there. So we got that covered barely. Thank you guys for joining us online. Those who are watching us on the YouTube or live stream, glad you're here, and we want to see you on Sunday at 10 a.m. as well. And so we'll be in our Advent series on Sunday, and we'll finish that up through Christmas. So please join us for that too, as well as our Christmas Eve service, which will be Friday night on Christmas Eve, the 24th. So I think that's it, 6? Is that right? 6 o'clock, Christmas Eve. So hopefully you guys can be there. But for you guys that are here, I'm glad that you're here. I feel like it's been almost a month since we have met on Wednesday night. We had Thanksgiving stuff, and we had other events, and then we've had fellowship suppers. So it's been kind of hectic and been kind of crazy. If you guys remember last Wednesday that we met almost a month ago, we discussed in our Theology 101 series, which we will continue tonight, we discussed suffering and the sovereignty of God, and kind of how our suffering and pain in the world kind of coincides with God's providence and His sovereignty and kind of what He's doing in the bigger scheme and in the bigger plan of creation. And we realized that we have suffering and we have rebellion and we have chaos in the world, not because it just happened to come into being, but because man rejected God's call and His command and ate of the fruit in Genesis chapter 3. And so therefore we have this depraved world that we live in. And not only is the world depraved, but you and I are both born into that depravity and into that chaos. And in that time, we need the gospel. We need Jesus. And apart from that, we cannot be saved. So here's what I want to do really the next 4 weeks, and actually the 22nd, Wednesday the 22nd, so this will be the Wednesday before Christmas Eve. Garth Urias, he's in the back doing some stuff with the kids right now, but he's actually going to be teaching a part of this series as well. And so this next 4 weeks is going to be entitled The Great Drama. And so we're going to do Act 1 tonight, and then Act 2 next Wednesday, and then Act 3 the following, and then after Christmas we'll do Act 4. And so I'll kind of explain what that means as I walk through. So the other day I was thinking, I was watching a documentary. I don't know if you guys have seen this documentary on Netflix. It's called 12 Peaks, and it's about a guy named Sims, and he's from Nepal. He's a Nepalese mountain climber. And his goal was to climb the 14 highest peaks in the world, all over 8,000 meters tall, to do 14 of them. I think he was going to try to do it in 8 months' time. And he was going to be the fastest guy in the world to ever do it. And so I actually didn't finish the documentary yet, so I don't know if he completed it. I'm sure he did because all the reviews said he did. But I'll act surprised at the end if he's climbing Mount Everest right now, where I have it paused. But I tell you this, I absolutely love a good story. Do you guys enjoy a good story as well? I just like a good story. And I'd almost rather watch, I've kind of found myself the last couple of years, I'd almost rather watch a documentary, a real life story on somebody than I would watch a movie that's got a fake script with fake characters and kind of the plot's already been laid out. But at the same time, I do love the Marvel movies, and I do love the Batman superhero movies. I love when you kind of have this battle and this waging war between good and evil, and you're rooting for the good guys to come in and save the day. And if you watch the movies, even if the movie's broken down into 2 parts, even if the bad guy looks like he's about to win in part 1, well, it's like, well, stay tuned for part 2 or the sequel to that, and then ends up the good guy comes in at the last minute and kind of saves the day. Now, as I've watched more movies like that where you have somebody come in and redeem and save the day, I realize that the people who are making these movies, y'all, they're not like Christians. Like, they're not like church folks that are making these movies. Like, I've read bios and I've seen them in interviews. They're not believers. But what is so crazy about the stories that they write is even though they are lost and are far from God, not even close to the Lord, y'all, there's this inner desire for them to see evil trumped by something good. Am I right? Like, there's just this idea. Everybody, you just pick anybody off the street, they would love to see some guy jump in and save the day, rescue the girl, stop the evil, thwart something crazy that might happen. run toward the gunfire and stop somebody. We all kind of get emotional about those stories. And so there's a great drama that happens throughout movies and throughout life. But on a larger scale, there is a massive drama that has taken place in all of history. And so this drama is given to us in the Bible. It is given to us in the Scripture. And so what's important is this, is that you and I understand this. You and I not only are going to read about this drama that has taken place, but we get to participate in the drama. The Lord is actually going to use us as actors and players in the redemptive story of this massive drama that we call life. And that is really neat to me that we get to be a part of that. So here's one thing to note. Christians, if they understand their role in the story and they understand who they are and where they came from and their need for redemption and their need to play a massive role in the church as we do now, then you can be the most healthiest, vibrant believer that you can be. And if you don't know your role in the story, because you've got a lot of people that don't know the Lord and they think they're the star of the show. They think they're the leading character in the drama. And if you feel that way, then you feel wrong. Or you might feel that way, but that's not okay to feel that way. And so we already have a star of the show. We already have a star of the show. We already have a leading character in the show. We already have the hero of the show. We already have the creator and the writer of the show already at play. And so here's what we're going to do. We're going to talk about this great drama the next 4 weeks. And so the first part of the drama is going to be creation. The second part will be the fall. The third part will be redemption. And the fourth part will be the new creation. And so I might break these up a little more detailed, but I thought for the next 4 weeks we will break it up into kind of 4 acts, if you will. So Act 1 will be this week, and it will be creation. Act 2 will be the fall next week. And then Garth will have in 3 weeks the redemption. And then the 4th week after Christmas, we will have the new creation. So you could look at the Bible. You could look at the Bible and you could say there's creation, there's fall, there's redemption, there's going to be new creation. And so kind of looking at life in that realm, and we live right now in the between the redemption and the new creation. That's where we operate kind of right here, if you will. We long and we are waiting for the return of Christ at some point, and no one knows the day nor the hour. So we are in that kind of like if Acts has 28 chapters, and that's the story of the church. So we're kind of the Acts 29 last chapter awaiting the Lord's return. Who knows if He'll come back in 20 years, 100 years, or 1,000 years. It doesn't really matter. We know what God has entrusted us with, and so we are faithful and obedient to God's Word until the Lord either calls us home or He comes back. So we know where we are in the story, but let's talk about kind of the bigger grasp of the story. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to read Genesis chapter 1 through Genesis 2, verse 3. So if you want to follow along, you can. If you don't know where Genesis 1 is, you just open the Bible. It's the very first, probably going to be your first page. Genesis 1, very first book of the Bible, Genesis 1 through Genesis 2, 3. So I'm just going to read this story, y'all, of creation, okay? This is the story of creation, and after I read it, I just want to make a few broad theological points from the creation story that really help us out throughout the entire book of Scripture. So here we go, Genesis 1, and we're going to start in verse 1, and you can follow along in your Bible or on your device. Genesis 1:1, in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. And God said, let there be light, and there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. And God called the light day, and the darkness He called night. And there was evening, and there was morning the first day. And God said, verse 6, let there be an expanse in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters. And God made the expanse, and He separated the waters that were under the expanse from the waters that were above the expanse, and it was so. And God called the expanse heaven. And there was evening, and there was morning the second day. And God said, excuse me, let the waters under the heavens be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas. And God saw that it was good. And God said, let the earth sprout vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees bearing fruit, in which is their seed, each according to its kind on earth. And it was so. And the earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed according to their own kinds, and trees bearing fruit in which is their seed, each according to its kind. And God saw that it was good, and there was evening, and there was morning on the third day. Verse 14, and God said, let there be lights in the expanse in the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years, and let them be lights in the expanse of the heavens to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. And God set them in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good, and there was evening, and there was morning on the fourth day. And God said, let the waters swarm with swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the expanse of the heavens. And so God created the great sea creatures and every living creature that moves, with which the waters swarm according to their kinds, and every winged bird according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. Verse 22, and God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, fill the waters and the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth. And there was evening and there was morning the fifth day. And God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures according to their kinds, livestock and creeping things, and beasts of the earth according to their kinds. And it was so. And God made the beasts of the earth according to their kinds, and the livestock according to their kinds, and everything that creeps on the ground according to its kind. And God saw that it was good. Verse 26. Then God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the heavens, and over the livestock, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. Verse 27, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God he created him, male and female he created them. And he blessed them. And God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the birds of the heavens and over the living things that moves on the earth. And God said, behold, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of all the earth, and every tree with a seed in this fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and to every bird of the heavens, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has breath of life, I have given every green plant of food for you. And it was so. And God saw and God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening and there was morning on the sixth day. Almost done. Genesis 2:1. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day, God finished his work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all of his work that he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and made it holy, because on it God rested from all of his work that he had done in creation. This is the word of the Lord, and that was a long text. So, let me say just a few things about Genesis chapter 1. So if you read Genesis chapter 1, that is like a blow-by-blow, day-by-day account of God's creation. Now, if you read Genesis chapter 2, most of you guys kind of know this, you have kind of a large section from verse 4 all the way to verse 25. You have this very long section where God goes back, well, actually Moses, who writes Genesis, goes back and recounts specifically how God made man. Specifically kind of how that happened. Obviously on the sixth day he made man, and so Genesis 2 is like a more in-depth review of what God did on that sixth day when God made man, if that makes sense. So it's not like it's backwards. He didn't create man and then do it again. It was Genesis 1 is kind of a massive outline, and then chapter 2 is like this in-depth talk about how God created man in his image. And so I want to say two things about Genesis, because I know there's always, anytime Genesis comes up, I've probably been asked this question more than any other thing over the years. when we talk about Genesis is, Will, do you believe that the earth is like millions and millions and millions of years old? And I think when I was younger, I was like, it doesn't matter. A day to the Lord's 1,000 years. 1,000 years is a day. Who cares? You know, I was just kind of flippant with it or whatever. It didn't really matter. Well, as I've read more of Genesis and as I've studied more, the word day in Hebrew here literally means a 24-hour day. And when you read that after every part of the creation story, you see, and there was evening and there was morning on the whatever day, first day, second day, third day. So, to say all of that, and I know there are people that could argue far better than I can for this stuff, and my job is not to like convince you to be a young earth Christian or an old earth Christian, meaning that you believe that the earth is millions of years old and God's kind of timing is just whatever and it doesn't matter. But I would probably land more on the young earth side, where I would say the world is no more than about 10,000 years old. Now, I know that gets kind of some stuff every time I talk to somebody about that, but if you follow like a biblical, chronological like schedule of what happened from Abraham and what we believe was before that with both Noah and into the creation story when Moses writes this in Genesis 1, the earth is probably no more than 10 or 12,000 years old. Now, there again, I know people argue that and talk about carbon dating and fossils and stuff, but there's been a lot of study to reject a lot of that kind of how they date things, and I don't think they really know, to be honest. I think it's just kind of a guess, and some of that guess that the earth is millions of years old really rejects, if you're not careful, much of the biblical story. And I don't know if that's just a reason that they do that. So whether or not I'm right or not, it probably doesn't matter a whole lot, because I believe that the story of Genesis is an absolute true story that historically happened actually like Moses writes this in Genesis 1. So I'm perfectly okay with that. And if you're like, well, hey, I have an objection to that, then you can talk to me later about that after we get through. And like I said, secondly, I believe the story is true. It's a literal story. It's not some made up thing. Moses is not trying to just appease the Israelites and say, well, here's kind of you want to know how it all started? Here's kind of a good story to let you know how it started. I believe it actually happened like it happened. And so I believe that God created the heavens and the earth and all the things in it in a literal 6th day, and he rested on the 7th. I think the best way to read this when we read historical literature in the Bible is to read it exactly how it is written and not try to read into it or read around it, although we would read Revelation a little different because it's apocalyptic literature, and all apocalyptic literature then was read in almost a figurative way. But other than that, I would say that we would read this just as plain as it is. So here's what I want to do. Moving forward, I want to give you guys, what do I got? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I just want to give you 6 things that I think, 6, yes. I want to give you just 6 things that I think are massively crucial as we look at the Genesis 1 text and into Genesis 2. These are just 6 things that I think that are important for us to see. And these things are true, like timeless. It's not just for this text, but it is true throughout the Bible and is true in your life to this day. And so the first thing is this. God is before all things. So in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. So at the beginning of creation is kind of when we start our timeline. Does that make sense? Like time and space, all things that we record start that in the beginning, God. Notice this, there is no, and this is a theological term, there is no such thing in the Bible as theogony. That means there's no origin story for God. He has always been. He will always be. He is the beginning and the end. All things start with Him and end with Him. He has always been. Now that may be overwhelming for your mind, in my mind, to think about something that has been eternal forever and ever and will always be forever and ever. Or the fact that you would die and go be with Christ if you're a believer, and that you would spend eternity with Him. The only thing that you know in your life is what? A beginning, a middle, and an end, right? This service had a beginning, it has a middle, and pending the Lord doesn't come back, it will have an end to the service, and then you will go, right? That clock will keep ticking Time will keep going. The expanse will keep going. Stars will continue to go. Meteors will continue to fly. The planets will continue to rotate until the Lord ceases that. And so when we think about like the creation story and we think about that in the beginning God was there, like it really almost blows your mind. If you can understand and go, I can track and I can get behind the creation story. If you can get behind Genesis 1, nothing else in the Bible is going to be too hard for you to see. The idea that Jesus resurrects dead people during his ministry is like, okay, fine. He spoke creation into existence. He said, let there be stars, and they just appeared. Let there be planets, and they just shot out. Like he speaks it and stuff just comes up. Like he doesn't need materials, right? Like he doesn't need any tangible item to create anything. He simply says something and stuff exists. Jesus in the Gospels, he just tells the storm to be quiet and it ceases. He just says, be healed, and the person is healed. He speaks it and it is, which we have no like fathomable way to like even quantify that. And so in his world, which is the only true world, he is the beginning of everything. And so understanding that, I think, is crucial. He's always been. My mind is still blown when I think about that. Colossians 1:17 says this. Paul writes this, and he, this is Christ, who is also God, and he is before all things. So before anything existed, he was. Remember the conversation he has with Moses before Moses goes back into Egypt to rescue his people. What does he say? Before Abraham was, I am. I've always been, and I'll always be. And so you can't fathom it. Like it's really hard for us to wrap our mind around a God like that. But thank God that is the God that we serve. And he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. Listen to me, there is not a molecule in this room that keeps its place if the sovereign, thrice holy God does not say, stay where you're at. That is his power. That is his sovereignty. The earth, gravity doesn't work if he does not allow it to continue to work. The planets do not spin. The sun does not give off heat. Your body right now, every one of you is in here looking, paying attention, hopefully, maybe, doing whatever, not thinking about other things going on or stuff you need to do at the house or how dark it is and how sleepy you are. But right now, your heart is pumping. Everyone, I believe, is alive still. Your lungs are breathing. All of those things, are any of you in control of any of the things function in your body right now? Not a thing. Every single thing that is happening is because God is allowing it to happen, and he allows it and desires that it happens. So when we think about how big God is, he's before everything, and everything that has come into existence, he's spoken into existence, he creates it. So that is overwhelming. And so if we have this view as we walk through the drama as a player in the story, that we are a supporting role for the star who is Christ, all of this stuff starts to make sense. You don't try to outrun your role, and you don't try to get outside of your lane. It's very important that we understand who God is in comparison to who we are. And we live in a culture, this is what's so tough, is we live in a culture that says you are the star of your show. That you are the most valuable, precious, important thing in all of the universe. Now, what we've done also is we've taught our children that. So they grow up going, I am the center of everything. Newsflash, you're not. And so I think that we need to be very careful that we give our children, grandkids, a very accurate portrayal of who God is and who we are. Because if we do that, we will always have a submissiveness to the King, because all things hold together in him. And notice this, and in him all things hold together. So if he chooses to not hold it together, everything dissipates. So every day is a gift. Every breath is a gift. Every time you chew your food and don't choke, it's a gift. Every time your body works like it should, it's a gift. So don't forsake that. Don't forget that as we move forward. The second thing is this, and this is something I don't want us to overlook in Genesis. My head has been itching. If you see me itching, I don't have lice. It's just my scalp. I don't know, my shampoo or what. You know what the problem is? Probably I use I'm kind of a use a body wash for everything kind of guy. Like, I don't have 50,000 bottles. It's like, give me the 7-in-1. And that's probably why my head itches. But the second thing is this, is that God speaks. So not only is God before all things, and he holds all things together, but God speaks to us. Now, this is really profound. I don't want there to be, I don't want us to overlook this kind of small snippet. God said, in all of these things, right? God said, let there be whatever. Light, animals, expanse, water, whatever. God said, let there be, and then there was. Don't lose sight of this. God is a communicative. He is personable. He talks with his creation. He reveals himself to his creation. He speaks, and he does not waste words when he speaks. When he speaks, things are created. When he speaks into the life of a lost person, that person is resurrected spiritually. Don't miss the fact that God is communicating and talking because he loves and desires an affectionate relationship with his creation. Don't miss that. I know it's real simple to be okay, yeah, God speaks, so what? I get that. But the fact that you have pagan worship all throughout the Near Eastern world, all throughout the world today, where the God they worship is distant, he is violent, he does not want any part of your life personally, and we enter this story and go, God desires to have intimacy and communion with his creation. And we see that when we get to Genesis chapter 2 and 3, where he's walking with his creation, and he's talking with his creation, and he's communing with his creation. He's in the garden with Adam and Eve. He's fellowshipping with the creation. How crazy is that? This is not a relationship that says, Adam and Eve, you better bring something to the table for me to like you. It's, I love you because of who I am, not because of what you've done or who you are. I made you from the dirt. So, when we look at this, we have, I think, many different faiths, especially when you get into Gnosticism and pantheism. When you get into some of these beliefs where people say God is the creator, but yet God is not personal. Now, how dangerous is that, right? That he kind of turned the world like a clock or top, and he kind of set it into motion, and things just kind of happen, and he kind of steps back away from it, and he's not actively involved in all the things that are going on. That's not the God that we worship. He is actively involved in every single thing that is going on. And I would say this too. I had a pastor say this to me years ago. He said, Will, he said, in your life right now, and you can think of this right now as you sit, how many things are you thinking about if you weren't paying attention fully to me, which I know you are, but if you were just thinking and stopped for a second, how many things are probably running through your head at any given time? 10 or 12? Just things, bills, this, money, relationships, my kids, they okay? My car okay? What time I got to be here? You're thinking about some things. I got to pick them up. I got to get supper ready. 10 or 12 things are going on. And at any given time, there's probably 50 billion things that the Lord is keeping in its place. And you only got a few things running through your head. And he keeps that all because that's who he is. That's what he has done. He holds all things together. So the fact that he would speak to his creation, have a relationship, man, that's overwhelming. I mean, that is overwhelming for me to think that the God that created all of the expanse, I mean, if you ever just stood outside, go outside the night, right? If you live in a place without a street light or something, you just look at the expanse of the universe and go, surely he has other things to be doing than care about my situation. But he does. That's wild. That is so, I mean, it really blows my mind to look and go, all of this and you value me? You placed me in creation above all other things. You made me in your image. The planets look way cooler than me. Some of the animals look way cooler than me. But you chose to use me and bear me as a bearer of you. That's crazy. So when we think about it, that's weighty, especially the fact when we talk about God speaking, that in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. And then the Word became, we talked about this a few weeks ago, the Word became flesh. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Jesus came wrapped, the Word of God wrapped himself in flesh willingly to come and die for us. There ain't no greater love. There ain't no greater love. You ain't going to find it. Not in a movie, not in a relationship, not in a marriage. There is no greater love than that. But that love that he has for us should project us to love our spouse better, to love our friends better, to work harder, to be faithful. That should all project us to live godly lives. And so the third thing is this, is God creates everything. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The word heavens there is the word we use for cosmos. It is the entire expanse of everything he makes. Y'all, they talk about the number of stars in we're in the Milky Way galaxy, right? They talk about the thousands of galaxies that are out there. And we can't even get to the end of our galaxy traveling at the speed of light for like 1,000 years. That's the expanse. That's the expanse of how big God is. He creates everything. There are molecules doing stuff infinite miles away that God is holding together because of who he is. That's so wild to me. That right now there's animals somewhere in some forest that the Lord is allowing to do that, and no one's even seeing it because that is displaying his glory because he's the creator of all things. It really is overwhelming. Genesis is one of my favorite books in the Bible because it shows us just in Genesis 1, we have God's character, his nature. We see all these things manifest to us of who he is and how he operates. So God creates everything, and he is the final say. He is the potter, we are the clay. Now here's what's crazy, kind of as a platform off of that. If God is the creator of all things, then here's what's humbling for the Christian, or really for anybody. We bring nothing to the table. Is that not, listen, you ain't bringing something cool and saying, look, Lord, look what I made you. Are you impressed? I just kind of speak and everything is, and I hold everything together. And out of the dust he formed us, and from Adam's rib he formed Eve. So when we think about these things, y'all, we don't bring anything to the table. He's created everything, not just everything, but including you and me and your children and my children and family and all of the things that we have, God has made. And so what should all of that creation in people, in trees, in birds, in mountains, and all the things, the 14 Peaks movie I've been watching, man, they're spanning the cameras over the mountain ranges and they're above the clouds, and just to see the expanse, there are peaks that men will never visit that God has created, and all of that stuff is just looked upon. When Sims, one of the guy who was climbing the mountains, he gets to the top of one of the mountains, right? I can't remember what it's called. I can't pronounce it. It's some crazy mountain. Like 1 out of every 10 climbers dies up there, and they can't even bring him down. And he gets to the very tip top of it, and his beard is frozen, and his team is shaking, and he's looking down across all of the mountains. This just ranges for miles in Asia, and he goes, feel pretty small. Yeah. Nobody stands in front of the Grand Canyon and goes, yeah, big deal. Or I'm pretty impressive. No one does that. No one stands in front of creation. I don't stand in front of the ocean and go, yeah, not a big deal. You stand and you just go, wow. You just kind of stand in awe. We bring nothing to the table. So we are made and created and formed by God for God. And so the idea is ridiculous that we can bring something to the Creator that would gain his attention or fancy us. Oh yes, come to us. That is why Christ had to come to us. We bring nothing good to the table. Even our best works on our best day in our best suit with our best attitude are filthy rags, Isaiah says. Your righteousness is not based on anything you bring, but it's based on God's love for you. So if we understand that, so creation shows us all of that too. Also to this, so we are, and this is what's important as we work our way down through this, we are image bearers of God. Now, what we've done in our culture is we have become these little puny, pathetic gods, right? Where we have elevated men to that status, right? And if you've never seen this, if you've ever seen a movie star walk through public and people lose their mind, or if you've ever seen a baseball player like sign autographs, and people are dying to touch him or touch this athlete or touch this famous person or somebody that you think has got some type of, like as if they have this godlike status. We are prone to go and worship the creation over the Creator, are we not? That is just our disposition as sinful people. We just pursue that stuff, right? And if it's not, and you may say, I worship no person. All right, that's fine. But there is something in your life or some item or something you love that you pursue after that. Or maybe it's your dog. Good grief, what a terrible God that is. What a terrible, nasty, slobbering God that is. Or maybe it's your children. Or maybe it's your grandchildren. Y'all, people make gods out of every single thing. It is ridiculous. It is ridiculous. And so if we're not careful to realize that we were made in the image of God, for God, then you will never truly know your identity. And you will worship your hobbies. And you will worship your family. And you will worship those things. And if you worship those things, here's the deal. They always let you down. Y'all, I love my daughter. But she is a terrible, terrible thing to worship. Unsteady, unreliable, back-talking. I mean, can be cute. Almost like a little bipolar, I think. Sometimes happy and then like, I hate you. You know, whatever. It's a terrible thing to pursue. A wife is a terrible thing to worship. And God never gave us that for worship, but for companionship and fellowship and communion. Don't miss who the Creator is and who the creation is. And don't miss what you worship. Because I'll tell you this, everybody worships something. If you have an agnostic, or you bring an atheist to me, like a legit guy that believes that God is non-existent, I will show you something in his life if I spend enough time with him or her that they worship something. There is something that consumes their time, their money, their desires, their pleasures, that excites them. There's always that in everyone's life. So be mindful of this. So we are made in the image of God. Now, this is a very crazy kind of like wording in Hebrew. It says this. So God created man in his what? Image. God created man in his image. And in the image of God, he created him male and female. And then verse 26, before it says this, and then God said, let us make man in what? Our image. So we get a glimpse of the Trinity right there. Kind of the first glimpse of the Trinity. The Son, the Father, and the Holy Spirit. Let us make God in our image and after our what? Likeness. In our image and after our likeness. So when I look at this, the crowning point of creation was humans, was us. We were built and made different. You are not an animal. I mean, I guess science calls us a mammal because we have hair. Some of us have hair. But they call us that. We are not an animal. You are not some part of like just the animal kingdom. You have been made and placed as an image bearer of God. He places that on nothing else in all of creation except for us. To be bearers of His image, to be made in His likeness. And God's image is built to rule over the creation that He has given, over the birds and over the sea and over the land. We are to do that, to be fruitful and to multiply. So a human is a living being capable of embodying God's communicable attributes. Like we can display a shadow of God's attributes. We can think, we can love, we can pursue, we can desire, we can create. God built us and wired us that way. You were not God, but you were made in the image of Him. So God is before all things. He speaks. God creates everything. We bring nothing to the table, and we are image bearers of God. In Psalm 100, verse 3 says this, know that the Lord, He is God. It is He who made us, and we are His. We are His people and the sheep of His pasture. We have been built for God. Clearly, that is the role. What is if someone said, what is the chief end goal of man? To make much of God and glorify Him in all things and worship Him forever. Why? Because you are His. Period. And so if we can understand that and grasp us that He is listen, People try to he ain't in control of me. Okay. I'll do what I want to do. Yeah, you think that. It's like an ant in the little ant farm going, yeah, I'll take this somewhere else. You ain't going nowhere, buddy. You know, I mean, you just can scream all you want at the glass if that's what you'd want to do. But when we see creation, the creation order, God made us and He keeps us, the only response is, yes, Lord. But here's the deal. We'll talk about this next week. But because of the fall, y'all, we don't naturally desire that. We don't naturally want to be submissive. And what we don't realize is this, that in submission to Christ, there's actually more freedom than in your rebellion. Some of you can attest to that. You thought you were free because you weren't having to come to church and you didn't have to read the Bible or submit to God or pray or love people well. You thought you were really free and liberated, but actually you were in more captivity than you've ever been in, doing your own thing. A slave to Christ is ultimately the freest man there is. That's a beautiful picture, and I'm sure Garth will touch on some of that when we get to the redemption part. So, and this is the last thing too. So everything was good in the beginning. Now here's what's really cool. After God creates everything, He says, and He created, and it was what? Good. Now, after He creates everything, on the seventh day, He says this. This is verse 31, Genesis 1. And God saw that everything, this is after everything's been made, at the end of the sixth day, and God saw that everything that He had made, and behold, it was what? Very good. All of it's done. It is not just good, but it is very good. And there was evening and there was morning on the sixth day. Everything was good in the beginning. Originally, y'all, before the fall, everything was good. He walked with Adam and Eve in the garden. There was no sin, no pain, no sorrow. There was communion with the creative order. God communed with His image bearers in perfect communion. And next week, we will take a look at the fall and see where that all went terribly wrong and that we still live as a product of the fall, but thank God that Jesus had come as a redeemer for us. Now, go to Genesis 2:25. Genesis 2:25. This is the last text before sin enters the garden and deceives Adam and Eve. Genesis 2:25 says this. This is perfect communion and guilt-free living, free in Christ. And the man and his wife were both naked, and they were not ashamed. Life is really good for the first 2 chapters of Genesis. The first part of the drama, as it comes to a close with creation, it won't stay like that. So Adam and Eve will go from they are naked, fellowshipping with God, unashamed, no issues. And as we get to the end of Genesis chapter 3, next week, we will see that they quickly were naked and they were ashamed. And not only were they ashamed, but they hid themselves from the Lord. So you're going, how in the world? Naked, not ashamed? All of a sudden they're hiding from God in the garden? When sin entered, everything else fell. And so we will talk about that come next week as we enter our second part of the drama of the story. So guys, listen, thank you for being here. Awesome folks online, thank you for listening. Join us next week, and then also join us Sunday. If you can't make it here at 10 a.m., then you can join us live on the YouTube channel and stuff through Facebook and watch the service live. So thank you guys for being here. We love you, and we're praying for you as well.